Hey everybody, what is up? This is part 2 of the huge metagame changes that are coming to Paragon, and a lot of them have already shown up in the recent 0.27 patch. Now, I'm talking about a bunch of heroes are rebalanced, the card point experience distribution that I talked about in the first video, that was all changed. They introduced draft mode, which I didn't mention in the first video, but draft mode is essentially very similar to the way League of Legends and Dota 2 does their hero and champion picking, where you've got two teams of 5 sitting next to each other, taking turns, picking 1 or 2 heroes at a time, and being able to counterpick your opponent is a large part of that draft mode, right? And on top of that, this particular draft mode allows you to designate which role you want to take and which position you want to take on the map. You can say, hey, I want to be a fighter or an assassin, and I want to be in jungle, or I want to be in middle lane or left lane or even all lanes. It's really cool, and it adds to the diversity needed in order to create a well-functioning team composition. The new draft mode also has the benefit of massively reducing the amount of time it takes to actually get into a match, which is great because in the past, depending on the hero that you chose, it would take you anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes to find a match if you wanted to play one of the newer heroes or maybe a hero that's popular in general. But now you can just get into a draft pick, and the odds of you getting the hero that you want are less than before because obviously you're not picking your hero straight up. But matches will still happen a lot faster, as you know, you'll learn to make compromises and all that, just like you would normally in League of Legends or Dota or really any other MOBA. So while draft mode is really appreciated and really helps to get you in game a lot faster, what about the changes to the game itself, where there have been extensive changes to everything from the minions to the inhibitors to the jungle? So starting off, the jungle minions only give card experience to the person that last hits them. This changes that dynamic entirely, where early game in previous iterations of Paragon, you as a team, as a 5-man team, would roam both jungles, clearing all of the camps as they spawned, and then getting a couple level boosts early match before you then go to your lanes. Well, now people just go to their lanes straight up and leave the jungler to solo all of these mobs by themselves, and sometimes you'll share red or blue buff, but most of the time the jungler's going to get it. In fact, minions as a whole for Paragon in this newest patch have been changed completely. There are less minions now, they do a bit more damage, and they give more experience. I'm going to go through the updates here. Reduced number of ranged minions base wave from 3 to 1. Increased ranged and melee minion experience from 12 to 18. Increased ranged and melee minion coins from 2 to 3. So if you, say, miss your last hit, you'll get a little bit more experience. On the damage side of things, minions which were at a 6.08 damage base have been increased to 15.2 and have 1.8 additional damage rating per level. They also reduced the siege minion, the bigger minion in the back. It reduced his health from 690 base and 15 per level to 375 base and 17 per level, so he's a little easier to tackle early on in the game. They also increased the ranged melee and siege minion resists versus structures to account for the change in reduced numbers. So it'll take around the same amount of time to push down a tower with these minions, even though there's less of them. They also updated super minion waves to include 3 regular melee minions, 1 ranged minion, and 1 super minion. Late game waves after 40 minutes will include an additional super minion, so 2 in total. And this is a big change, and I have experienced these guys in action. They are tough. They have a lot of health and do a lot of damage. They have a lot more health than the super minions of the previous Paragon iteration. Lane minions also are now spawning earlier, 15 seconds after the match starts to be precise. They also updated the buff camps to spawn at 150 seconds, Prime Guardian spawns at 300 seconds, and the updated white camp spawns at 120 seconds. So a bit later than the way it used to be. And then we come to one of the biggest changes in this patch, and I'm talking about the inhibitor updates. They increased the inhibitor health from 3,500 to 4,000. Okay, so they're a little bit more tanky and a little harder to take down. But what the biggest change is the fact that inhibitors no longer respawn, which means once you get an inhibitor down, at this current patch, there is no way to get it back up again, and you will constantly have super minions flooding that lane, which makes it incredibly more difficult to come back at this moment. I know in the future they're going to make it so that you can take the purple orb and take it to your own team's capture point as opposed to the enemy's, and this will revive all downed inhibitors instantly. So that'll be an interesting mechanic once it comes in, but at the moment, if you have an inhibitor down, that means the enemy team will be at that much more of an advantage. And now we move on to hero changes, and boy oh boy have there been a lot of them. Starting with one of the biggest changes, as part of the larger design change according to them, all passives have been removed from heroes, with some being integrated into their remaining abilities. Now, I haven't looked at all of the heroes, so I can't tell you which have had their passives integrated into their remaining abilities, but man, not gaining health on Grux, for example, that passive's gone, that sucks. I'm just kind of bummed. You know, I liked passives. I feel like they need to be back personally, but we'll just have to wait and see what Epic does with them. Moving on to the rest of the changes. The left mouse button attack, or a right trigger attack on the console players, does not need to be leveled anymore. It now automatically levels as the player levels up. So base damage now increases per level, and card scaling now remains the same. For a fighter, you get high base damage and low base damage gained per level. For a shooter marksman, you have low base damage but high base damage gained per level. And for a caster, you also get low base damage and low base damage gained per level. But, of course, you have the ability from ability damage and energy-based cards, so that's different entirely. Hero health balance for the upcoming basic attack changes are now set to new DPS targets for shooters, so fighters and tanks have had their armor and armor per level increased, whereas casters and ADCs, or ranged carries, have had their armor and armor per level slightly increased. And to compensate for not being able to level your basic attacks anymore, your leveling your abilities has been changed in such a way so that when you do hit level 15, you won't have an ability that isn't fully maxed out. So everything will be fully maxed out no matter how you level your character up to level 15. And now that we're moving on to the individual hero changes, I'm not going to go through each one in super in-depth. I'm just going to give you guys the cliff notes on some of the more important changes. Decker's ultimate, for example, containment fence, used to be pretty annoying. You used to block off your team, and it really didn't do much in terms of like damage or anything. It has been reworked. It has been redesigned. It now prevents enemies from walking out of it by applying a small knockback and a low amount of damage when they attempt to leave. So it like bounces them back, which is kind of cool. And then enemies which touch the fence from the outside are also sucked inside. And this is kind of a big change too. So you have to be really careful of this containment field now. And it no longer blocks allies from walking through the fence, though it does still stop enemy projectiles. And this is really, really great too. Cooldown has been increased from 100 seconds to 120 seconds at all levels, so it does take a little bit longer to use. And the placement range has been reduced from 1750 to 1200, so you can't place it super far away now. Containment for fence now also supports team colors, so you can tell whose fence is whose. Moving on to Gideon, he has seen some changes to his own ultimate black hole, where they have added an extra pull towards the center when the ability begins. The pull strength has been increased and normalized at all distances from the center of the ability. They have also removed the ability confirmation, and it now casts instantly, which makes it a lot easier to use, and they no longer pull jungle creeps when you're using it. So that's really cool, and that should make playing him a lot more fun. I know I've seen some teammates who play Gideon where they use that special card that knocks up enemies. So like they'll jump in there, knock up everybody around them, and then immediately cast their ulti, and it's so devastating. If you're using Gideon, use that card that knocks up people. It's just dirty. And finally, we come to the biggest hero change, Kallari. Kallari, as a whole, has been reworked. Her passive has been reduced, obviously. Her slash base damage has been reduced, and I do believe her attack speed has also been reduced. The cooldown on her backflip has been increased from 12 seconds to 18 seconds, so you have to be really careful now because you might not have it off a cooldown when you need it. The Shadow Walk has also been changed. Stealth duration increased and now scales with ability level. So, where in the beginning, back a patch ago, it used to start at 6 seconds. Well, now it starts at 18 seconds and goes up to 36 seconds as you level it. The cooldown is slightly reduced per level as well. The allied stealth sound has been removed, and teammates will only hear when stealth is activated. Enemies, and this is the biggest change, enemies will no longer hear Kallari while she is stealthed near them, but not visible. So if she is visible but stealthed, I believe you will hear her, which is kind of a huge change, because if you don't have the ability to see her, then she is gone. Like once you go invisible, it's you get out a free jail card there. Kallari now gets a small attack damage bonus on the first hit of her / basic attack if she breaks stealth to attack a target, so that's kind of cool now. And the biggest change to it is Kallari now has a 2-second fade time at all levels of stealth. So when you hit the time to go invisible button, it's a 2-second charge up. So you're still completely visible during that 2 seconds of charge up time. So you really have to know when to use it so as to escape properly and not die. Her Blood Dagger has been renamed to Crippling Dagger, and the damage has been adjusted to be a little bit lower this time around. The bleed has been removed, but it now slows targets by up to 145 movement speed when fully maxed out. Additionally, damage scaling has been reduced from 1.0 to 0.5, and I can confirm that the dagger does not do a ton of damage like it used to, which is kind of sad. Her ultimate, Death Sentence, has been completely redesigned, whereas in the past, it used to be this kind of dash forward and you would do a certain amount of damage, which was pretty sizable to anyone within your attack range. It has been changed to a global warp that does a percentage increase of damage to her basic attack on hits. So you warp to the target and you will hit them with a multiplier to your basic attack damage. And that's pretty much it. So you mark all enemy targets on the map and reveals all of them for 5 to 7 seconds depending on when it's leveled. And this gives Kallari and her team full vision. During this time, Kallari may choose to teleport to any enemy after a 1.25 second channel, and then on arrival, the target takes 1.0, 1.5 to 2.0 times base attack damage, and then the cooldown is 125 seconds all the way down to 105 depending on level. This has been a huge change for me. It really helps making her more of a team player where she can be anywhere at any given time kind of thing, so she definitely fits more of that assassin role, but at the same time, you've taken away a lot of her ability to do damage and to carry the team via killing a lot of people. And with her previous ultimate, you used to be able to fly through multiple enemies in a straight line, doing a ton of damage that would ignore their physical resistance, and that would be really useful in team fights, more so, in my opinion, than a singular global teleport that, sure, it does get you close to the enemy, and it does do a little damage, and it allows you to just immediately throw your dagger at them and then start hitting them with basic attacks, but that's all you have, is at the end of the day, after your teleport, your dagger, which does less damage and slows the opponent, and then your basic attacks. And the basic attacks have been nerfed from the way they used to be. You used to be able to attack quickly, and now you attack a lot slower. I have to use almost double the amount of attack speed items to get their Kallari's attack speed to the way it used to be after only using one equipment card's worth of attack speed stuff. And it's just like, I'm annoyed because compared to other people like Grux and the probably the upcoming hero coming out, who is also a jungler, she just doesn't seem able to compete unless your team is already damage heavy and you just need somebody, for the numbers, that ability to just show up instantly and make it a 5v4 instead of a 4v4 kind of thing. But I don't mean to rant. I'll get into the whole changes of how she used to be versus how she is now in another video where I just strictly talk about Kallari. But this basically wraps up the rest of this huge meta sweeping changes episode. I was actually surprised that this patch brought as many changes as it did. I was mainly going to talk about the changes to come, but a lot of them showed up already. But the ones we have to look for, like the huge change with the removal of the movement system and instead we get teleports, that will be really interesting, and I will definitely talk about that in a upcoming video. But for now, more Paragon content on the way, as per usual, alongside some other things like Elder Scrolls and any other game that I'm currently enjoying at the moment. But thank you again for watching, guys. I appreciate your viewership. Rate the video, please, down below, and before you go, leave a comment and let me know what you think about this patch and its changes. Do you like the new minions? Do you like that inhibitors don't come back up until later on in future patches when you can take the orb and drop it in your own spot and then they all come back up? I don't know. What do you guys think about that? What do you think of the Kallari remake? What do you think of Decker's ultimate change? I'd like to hear it, and we'll have a discussion down below. Again, thank you for your viewership. Subscribe, and I will catch you next time.